I think it's wild when people talk about just make logical decisions with money.
Yeah.
And as you know, money is way more about thoughts and emotions than it is about math and numbers.
Can we talk about that? I'm Elysia Skye, and this is the Brilliance Method podcast. Through mindful, motivational, and often hilarious conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives, you'll discover new ways to create your life on purpose. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Brilliance Method. Today, we have the honor to hang out with Stephen M. Hughes, who is a friend of mine, a colleague. I had the privilege of producing a series that he starred in all about money tips and habits and financial literacy. Stephen is a financial therapist and Reiki master who blends financial psychology and behavioral finance, proven wealth strategies, and Reiki energy healing to help people build healthy relationships with their money. How about that, huh? So if you're listening and you're like, I can have a healthier relationship with my money, you have found the right episode today. And Stephen goes beyond financial literacy basics to help people address the root causes of their money problems, offering simple frameworks that lead to a healthy financial mindset and lasting change. So we're going to get deep into this today, and I'm probably going to reveal some stuff that I didn't plan to reveal. Stephen also facilitates financial wellness programs, and he leads talks for companies like amazing, huge companies like Google and Tiffany and Company and Airbnb and many others to help their audiences reduce financial stress and achieve greater clarity and confidence around their money. And he's also the founder of the nonprofit nomoney.org. Make sure you check that out. The link is in the episode description. Stephen also works with college campuses across the country to teach Black college students how to avoid common money missteps while on campus and create a legacy of financial wellness. What a brilliant, amazing human. Hi, Stephen.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, love. You know what's kind of fun is I don't know what order I'm going to be putting your episode out, but you're the first dude I've had on my show so far.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, I feel honored.
Yeah, me too, man. It's just been all these amazing women, and I think primarily because I coach a lot of women. When you and I connected on set for Groove, I was like, man, I feel like we're kindred spirits, and I have so much to learn from you. And our conversations went deep, and we have a mutual, love and background of Reiki, and yeah, you're just magical. I'm so happy you're here.
Well, I appreciate you for letting me be the first man on the podcast and the invite to drop some masculine energy and some different things that we'll talk about today in terms of Reiki and all the energy stuff.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And we need that duality. We need that yin and yang energy. So, before we get into all the incredible, helpful information you're going to share with our audience, I want to learn more about you. And because it's such, I mean, it's very brilliance method. It's very on brand for us to have someone who's, okay, yes, a money expert, but then also a Reiki master, right? That's just it. Like we couldn't have found each other at a better time in life. And it's so beautiful. So, which one came first, the healing or the interest in financial wellness?
That's a really good question. The interest in financial wellness came first. And so I know that I met you on my birthday earlier this year, but
That's right.
yeah, celebrating the birthday. But I know that when it came to money, I really was trying to figure things out. And, I'm a first generation Jamaican American. My parents didn't grow up navigating this financial system. So when they came to the United States, they gave us all the tools that they could in terms of managing money. We didn't talk about money often in the household. And we also went through some different financial hardships when I was younger, even so much to where we were living in a 3-bedroom house, and sometimes there were 8 to 10 of us in the house, depending on who was here from Jamaica or who was moving in. And so
Wow.
my house growing up was that house, that
Yeah.
family members could come to. But in those situations and those experiences, not talking about money kind of left me to make every money misstep possible when it came to managing my money myself. So when I got to college, I had 7 maxed out credit cards. I had overdraft fees to the point they closed all of my bank accounts and told me to
When
eat.
you got to college, usually people mess that up after they get to college.
Well, all these things happened when I was in college, so
There we go.
it
Wow.
brought these mistakes with me. It's just that the because we didn't talk about money, I think it was challenging to say like, oh, what should I do? What are the things that I should be doing with my money when I started getting more of it?
Right. And to be fair, like you go to college. I remember my first day at college, there's a booth to sign up for a MasterCard, right? So it's like they kind of, I don't know if preying is the right word, but like they prey on these young kids who don't know anything, don't have any financial literacy. And our parents, our generation didn't know, like how do we know unless our parent is someone like you?
No, I feel you. Well,
Right.
I will say this: my mom, when I was younger, she told me stay away from credit cards, and
Mm.
so because of that, or possibly because of that, I got 7 of them. Because that
He's a rebel spirit.
that first week on a college campus, like you mentioned, on that welcome back week, they're giving you credit cards and free sandwiches and T-shirts and all these different things as long as you sign up for an application.
Mhm.
And me not knowing like better in that situation, I signed up for all of them. I was like, let me get all the free stuff.
Oh
And so
man, that sandwich cost you like 20 grand in interest, huh?
you have no idea. $5 sandwich, $150 down the road. It's crazy.
Wow.
As I made those financial missteps and really wanted to turn my financial life around, I did have a mentor give me a book that was just full of stories. And, storytelling is like the first entertainment for us. Like, it is easily the best way to communicate an idea to someone. And
Mm.
so that's what really started me on the right path financially. And that was, boy, over 10, dang near 15 years ago.
Wow. And what was the book?
The book was called The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. And so it's a
Mhm.
book about a prince who's trying to show his dad, like, hey, I'm ready for the money of the kingdom. Like, you can trust me. And his dad is like, all right, well, you need to go out and make sure that you know how to manage it. And they're just each chapter has another story about how this person either messed up his money, like he saved a bunch of it and then gave it to somebody to like make more money, but the person he
Mhm.
gave it to didn't know what they were doing. And I mean, we see that in our lives so often. Once I read that book and started taking some different financial actions of my own, I also was getting multiple stories of how people kind of messed their money up and got back right. And so all of those things helped me kind of start, getting out of the big hole that I dug.
Well, and also you, knowing you even as briefly as I have, you're the kind of person who wants to be a better human, wants to do your best, and you have compassion, which also means you have self-compassion. So when you hear other people's stories, I can imagine there's a reflection going on, going, huh, how can I be better? How can I do this better? Not in a competitive way, but just to be happier.
Yeah, and I wasn't always so, and even in some ways, in shapes and forms, like maybe a tinge of competitive ways that I'm
Yeah.
hearing someone's story and saying like, "Hey, I want to do better than this." But I think when I was younger, making financial mistakes and missteps, I kind of buried my head in the sand. I wanted to avoid all of the financial things that were happening, so I wasn't really prepared to give myself that grace or that compassion because I was like, dang, how are you making these mistakes? Like, how do they keep piling up? And so I will say that it sometimes it takes some time to
Yeah.
turn things around and even to take a step in a direction to say, like, hey, I'm going to do this a little bit better. And I'm going to trust myself that I will actually do it better.
Everybody has their own breaking point or their catalyst for change. So you hit yours where you're like, I can't keep doing this. So, two questions. What was that for you, if you're open to sharing? And how does somebody realize that they have an opportunity to choose that this is now the catalyst for them, or they can go back into another cycle?
It was 2011, and I had got pulled over for a DUI. And I still like even telling the story now, like I can still feel the feelings when it happened. That night, like I was out, I hadn't been asleep for almost 24 hours because the job that I was working at the time, like I would start working at 6 a.m.
Wow.
And I was out with people, celebrating a centennial celebration, and yeah, I had drinks, and this was back before Uber and Lyft were really popping.
Right.
But yeah, I got pulled over, and I remember like the company that I was working for. One of my clients had a tow truck, and he had told me, he was like, "Hey," I called him. I was like, "Hey, I'm in a jam and I need some help." And he's like, "Well, no worries. I can help you. Just give me $75 and I'll go ahead and tow it back to my spot so that when finish dealing with what you're dealing with, you can come and pick up your car."
Hmm.
And in that situation, I had bought so many drinks that night, food, just everything, celebrating hard, the whole 9 yards. But when he had asked me for that money, I didn't have $75 to pay him
Wow.
to take my car back. And I had went to a class, which is part of like getting my charge reduced down to reckless driving or something less. And when I went to the class, we had to calculate how much money we had lost in that night.
Interesting.
And when we had to calculate it, it was something like almost $11,000
Wow.
that I had lost because of like how much I had spent on drinks, how much I had spent on food, any opportunity cost, anything, insurance going up, any just all of those costs stacking up. Once I saw the number, I was like, "There's no way that I can keep doing this."
Hmm.
And actually, I don't even drink anymore.
There
like,
you go. That changed you.
to tell you how much it has changed me, like it set me on a path to where I was making some really big changes. And one of those changes wasn't just for my physical health when it comes to like not drinking anymore, but the biggest change was my financial health. Like I just could not imagine myself in that position again, to where something that I needed, something that would really change like my experience, I couldn't even put my hands on $75. And I think that there's times where, to answer your second question, where we feel the cost of like living the way that we're living, whether it is the real cost of living paycheck to paycheck, when you feel like you could have changed that experience, or the cost of not having your financial house in order, where it's like, if I had this mapped out, or if I had focused on saving a little bit more money, or putting some money to the side just so I could take a trip to see a loved one before they transition to the afterlife. Like if I had just done a couple of these things differently, like this experience would be different. We have those experiences every single day where we can look back to say like, dang, if I just had done this one thing different, or because of this one thing and experience, these are some things that I would have done different. And going forward, I will not live like this. Earlier on in my financial professional career, like I would be very hesitant to share that DUI story, for many reasons, right?
Hmm.
Where people are looking at me, trusting me to do things like by the book and in order. But I'll also say that very few things are linear in this life. And when people are talking about by the book or in order, my financial life doesn't look like a Dave Ramsey or a Susie Orman. Um, there are a lot of things that I did on this financial road, and a lot of people would say that I'm a financial success now, but the rules that were written before had to be broken and rewritten for myself.
I think that's fair for everyone, truly. It's not a one size fits all situation. And thank you for sharing that here. And, when we share from the heart and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, it does create a deeper connection, a deeper sense of trust. And there are people watching or listening right now who have been through those experiences, whether they're DUIs or some other thing that they might feel some shame around or whatnot, and my friend Andrea always says, look, if you could have done it better, you would have. And I think that's true most of the time, and obviously, if we trust, if we have faith, this is how your script was written for you to get to where you are right now, even though at the time I know that was probably so horrible and obviously expensive. uh when we were at the where were we? We were at the Opry, you and me and a couple of our friends, and I asked, does anybody want a drink? And I went and I got a drink for two of my friends. one of them who you know very well, it
Mhm.
was $92. I mean, yeah, so I hear you, right? So if anyone is like, "Should I quit drinking?" It's an expense regardless of health.
It is an expense for sure, and I will say that my, like, dining out, I eat a lot of my money, but my dining out, uh, budget was changed when I stopped drinking. It was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I've been drinking a lot of my money, now I can eat the money. This is
There you
great."
go.
Another thing I'll mention when I got arrested that I don't think I've shared on any other podcast or interview, when I had gotten arrested, it was a Thursday, so I was supposed to go to work the next day, and there, by the grace of the Most High, there was a man who had gotten his 4th DUI arrest, who was in, like, the same center that I was in,
Wow.
and he was, like, my coach to just get my stuff back on track. He was like, "Hey, man, you need to call your job and let them know that you're sick, you're not coming into this morning," because it was morning at that time. He's like, "And you also need to do this and get your temporary license and do this." I was like, "Dang, how do you know all this information?" He's like, "Oh, this is my 4th DUI." And so,
Mm.
as you're talking about, like, getting what we need in some of these experiences, sometimes it's also finding the people who have these experiences who can tell us, like, "Hey, this is what you can do. This is what, these are things that you can change or things that you can take action on right now as you're in this emergency situation."
You know what? And that's one of the main reasons why I love working with corporate clients as you do, because when you're in a room, or you're at a conference, like when you were here, that conference room had thousands of people in it, right? And it's like, you tell a story, and not only does it impact that person listening, but there's hundreds or thousands of other people who have an opportunity to be healed from what it is you're saying, or to have a shift in perception, their own miracle, and then they take that home, and then they get to have a different experience with their family, and there's this ripple effect. And I love one-on-one clients. At the time we're recording this, are still working with one-on-one clients, and it's amazing, and that ripple effect is there. In addition, being able to share this story even with this audience and in front of those corporate clients is incredible. If any of my corporate friends are listening, bring Steven in, because he is magical and he will shift whatever is going on with you with your money stuff. And
I
you know
appreciate that alley-oop. Thank you for
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you're welcome. We can't assume just because somebody has a big girl job that they have big girl pocketbook, and that's just not the case. And it's funny. I when I was younger, my mom was very close with a celebrity. I won't mention their name, but when I moved to Los Angeles, this guy was like my only friend in LA, and he's super famous. And we're walking. He's like, "You ever been to the Beverly Center?" And like we're walking around, hanging out, and he's just showing me all these things. And I'm 19, and I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. And he like drives me by his house, and I drive him by my favorite house, and we're looking at these houses in Beverly Hills. And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I actually think I'm at a point where I'm living beyond my means." And he said that to me. And I was like, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean, living beyond your means? I was 19, and here I am in my 40s, constantly questioning, am I living beyond my means? And
Mm,
and I don't know what that means to you, but what that means to me. And I recently had a conversation with my uncle. I want to go to Australia in November. And he said, if you don't have a a travel savings that you're gonna pull on, if you gotta put this trip on your credit card, you're living beyond your means. And I was like, I might have to put the trip on my credit card. So, yeah.
in terms of beyond your means, I think that your uncle kind of gave you a really simple definition there, and he's right. I think beyond your means is if you are funding your lifestyle with debt.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us, when it comes to like having some type of financial freedom or giving ourselves some grace, some of that grace may be us not looking at a spending plan or what we spent last month or for the past few months. But that's a huge challenge when you do have these things that you want to accomplish, like going to Australia or starting that business or
Mhm.
paying for your child's college education. And so
Yeah.
I definitely understand living beyond your means because I was right there with you. But I think that for people who are living beyond their means, a lot of times with my clients, because I work with entrepreneurs and high income earners, a lot of times people find that they live. beyond their means because they aren't clear on exactly what they want financially. Like they have not sat down and gotten clear on their financial non-negotiables. Like the things that are going to happen no matter how much money they have, whether it's $10, $100, $1,000, no matter what, they know this is going to happen. And some of those things for me is like spending time with my fiance and my family, or um, having enough money where I can try a new restaurant each month or try my favorite restaurant to go back to.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those things in mind, like knowing that, hey, these are the things I'm going to do no matter what, and then you're putting money to the side for those things, odds are that you're setting yourself up for a place where you can live beyond your means, where you
Mhm.
don't know like where the dollars are going. Because as the money comes in, especially when you're starting to earn like a lot of money, you just mentioned like having the big girl job and not the big girl pocketbook. Like
Mhm.
the money may be coming in bunches, but it may be going out in the same way. And so, if you don't know those non-negotiables, then you also won't know the things that you're willing to sacrifice financially. That doesn't mean a lot to you, but that you could actually be spending a lot of money on right now.
Mhm. You know, a lot of you mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier, and I sat in on a Dave Ramsey class back in 2011. Interesting when you were starting your journey, right?
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, okay, this guy's cool and all, but it doesn't work for me. You know, the idea of like it's almost like joyful starvation is how I looked at it. I'm like, I don't get to do the things that make me happy. Like I get there's a time and a place where you got to buckle down, you got to make shit happen. You got kids to feed 100%, right? What you're saying as far as non-negotiables is like, okay, you have a budget of like, this is how much my life costs. But then the mistake most people are making then is they're not including the things that they like to do recreationally regularly or things that they know are coming up. Like you're getting married, right? You're going to be putting some money into a wedding. And so that looks different. And yes, we have to make choices. You know, okay, I'm going to save on this because I'm going to spend on that. But where does somebody even begin with looking at that? Because I think there's guilt involved, right?
Yeah, there could be guilt involved. That's an emotion that hangs out around our money if we had some financially traumatic experiences in the past. I had a client who they grew up with humble beginnings. Like they were one of many siblings, and their parents were from another country who came over here. And their challenge was that when they were younger, they didn't really have McDonald's money growing up, right? Like they didn't dine out at all,
Mm,
or often at all, unless it was like a celebration for the family. And so as they got older, they started spending their money on food in a very lavish way. Like they would go to these Michelin star restaurants. They would fly to another city just to try out a restaurant. They would do all these different things. They did feel guilty because they saw that some of their family members didn't have the resources to do these things. And so very quickly, like guilt or even shame can creep into your life when it comes to how you're managing your money. The way to get these things away from you or to put them at bay when they do creep up is part of it is to examine like what are the things that you really want to do with your money. So getting clear on those non-negotiables, like I mentioned, but also getting clear on the sacrifices that you're willing to make so that if someone does, hit you with that must be nice. Must be nice to be able to go to Australia in the middle of the year, not on holiday, but just to go.
mhm,
You can let people know, like, yeah, it's nice, but I made some sacrifices to make sure I could do this. You
mhm.
can be clear on that, right?
I get a lot of must be nices.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm,
People hit me with the must be nices too,
mhm.
but that's okay with me because I think that there are things that I make sacrifices for that some people may not
Yeah.
financially, and I think for people who are listening, the clearer that you can get on your money story, so the things that you experience with money, the things that you have seen with money, the things that you've heard about money all of your life, and even your parents' experience with money and their parents' experience with money, that's going to help you get some clarity around that too. Like it won't. Don't let people must be nice to you to death.
No.
Like because in some uh places, like there are people who say that and they mean that. Like, oh, it must be nice, like great for you,
Mhm.
right? But then there are also instances where somebody's gonna say that, and it's like an underhanded, I wish I could do that. Or why does it have to be them, not me? And that's not the energy that you want around your money or any of your financial decisions.
No, and those people who are disempowered have an opportunity to work with someone like you to get there and figure it out. So, yeah, when you get hit with those must be nices, it's like, well, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work emotionally, I'm doing the work financially, and I've done the work physically to create my life. And I am willing to sacrifice once in a while. I've put plenty of concerts on a credit card, which I'm now dealing with. So it is what it is. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That,
And I think, again, I'm not knocking Dave Ramsey, but I think that's where he's a match for so many others, not for me, because that, like, experiencing life experiences, not things. And you and I have talked about that. We just want
right.
more experiences, not things. And it's a non-negotiable for me.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, like I'm not Dave's audience. Like he's not making content for me. The things that he talks about is not for me. The 7 baby steps are good information, but like you said before, I don't need that rigidness. I need somebody who understands like cultural backgrounds and differences of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, which is why I suggest people see financial professionals and not just people who are writing books and have radio shows. Because Dave Ramsey doesn't have any certifications or anything like that. Like he'll tell you that his ideas are not original; they're not of his own, and so
Mm.
that's another thing for people to acknowledge too. Like there may be loud voices about your money, there may be even famous voices about your money, but you still have to take a step back and grab your financial life in the steering wheel. And another thing I'll mention, because you talked about doing the work when
Mhm.
somebody hits you with that must be nice.
Mhm.
Imagine somebody telling Serena Williams it must be nice. It must be nice to hit that forehand like that. It must be nice to be able to do a split and return a serve. Like that would be crazy. And so I think for a lot of us, we don't acknowledge the work that we're doing when somebody hits us with something like that. Right. I think some of it is that our mind goes back to like, do I deserve this? As you mentioned, the
Mm.
guilt around your money. But we have the ability to like rewire our minds with different stories and of course like affirmations and declarations.
And I'm excited. So when you guys check out this episode, Stephen has affirmations and declarations around your money. So click that link and dive into it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I want to mention, I was talking to a friend recently, and we were talking about money, and I was talking about how I want to go to Australia and this and that. And I'm trying to figure it out, and I mean, it. I can make it happen. Like, I can decide right now I'm going. I can make it happen, right? And they said to me, it's really simple, Alicia. It's money in, money out. It's a black and white matter. And I said, you couldn't be more wrong. And I don't like to tell people that, but I'm like, there's emotions connected to these decisions. And they're like, what are you talking about? They just didn't understand it, and this person who I love and respect so much, has made their own choices and sacrifices around their career and this and that to raise a beautiful family and whatnot. And I was like, I have like some money trauma, right? And I don't even like to say things like that or label them, but like it is what it is, and a little bit about my story, but I started by saying, like, I was born into a multi-millionaire household. We lived in a 3-story mansion because my father was a criminal,
Mm,
right? It was not good money. And then we lost it all. And then dad went to jail. So like little me learned, oh, money might be bad, right? Or like, is this lifestyle bad? And then I think you might know this. My mother passed away when I was 12 years old.
mm,
And we received a small inheritance, but my sister and I inherited the house, which I used to sell and buy my first condo. And I got through a lot of my first years in LA, having some of that money every month. And I had this idea that this is like blood money. I don't want this. I want my mother back, right? So money equals death. Money is a criminal thing. Like all this programming going through. So I was saying to this person, I'm like, it's not that simple. I have shit to undo. I need to hire Steven, right? Because we think, "Oh, why can't I just follow a budget? Why can't I just do it? Why can't I just stop using credit cards?" And it's like, "Honey, you know better than I do. Like, we have stuff we have to work out."
Yeah, we definitely have stuff to work out. And for the person who mentioned that it's very black and white, I think it's wild when people talk about just make logical decisions with money.
Yeah.
And as you know, money is way more about thoughts and emotions than it is about math and numbers.
Can we
It's
talk about that?
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
when people are talking about taking the emotions out of money, something that we should acknowledge
Mhm.
is the information that emotions are around our financial decisions.
Mm.
Like when you are about to make a big decision, but you are anxious and you're nervous, like we should get clear on that to say, like, okay, well, whoa, this is one of the biggest financial decisions you're making in your life. Why are you nervous? Do you need more information? Is it something that you don't have clarity on that you want to get figured out? Are you nervous to even ask questions because of the financial experiences you had in the past and you don't want to seem stupid?
Mm. And are you listening to your intuition, and is your intuition in conflict with this choice?
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Because that's the other thing. I feel like we get told to make financial decisions logically and then to neglect things like our intuition. That's
Mhm.
also information we can use for financial decisions. The person who told you that, I'm sure they love you and wants the best for you.
Yes.
But most of our decisions around money live in the gray area.
Yeah.
Very few things are very black and white. Like
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to buy groceries. That's very black and white. I know that I'm going to feed myself. I'm going to sustain myself. The next breath is going to happen, hopefully, right? Like that's the most important one. Those are very black and white things. When it comes to decisions that we're making, that are uh, also impacted by the way that we have felt, the things that we have thought, the things that we've experienced. There's nothing black and white about those because our money decisions, when we're thinking about money, right, we start putting the equation of money and value together as early as the age of 2.
Mm.
So think about that. Like, even if we're in a household that we're not being told, this is how I make money, or this is where this money is coming from, and it's a good thing, or this is where money is coming from, it's a challenging thing. Like, you're starting to put together those questions and answers for yourself if no one says anything to you. And as you mentioned, like having a experience where you get a large sum of money from someone passing,
Mhm.
now there are these emotions that are tied up like a ball of yarn in the way that you're spending the money. Because I've
Mm.
had clients like that, and I've done a story with a publication specifically about getting windfalls and inheritances, and feeling different emotions. Like one, you don't want to be the financial faucet for your family, where people can just come and get whatever they want from you, even to your own detriment. But two, you also don't want to feel like you're using blood money
Mhm.
because this money came from the action of somebody transitioning, but you didn't get it because, hey, this person died and they want you to have this money. That
Mhm.
person prepared, for you, and they want to pass something on for you to have resources, even when you don't hear their voice or see their face. And
Yeah.
so there's so many things that I mean, we can talk about this one thing for an hour. A lot more gray happens in financial decisions than the black and white.
It does. I did an episode on this show called My Wealth Comes from Love. And
Mm,
it's all about that, right? And kind of working through that. And I was working with a coach in 2020 into 2021, and my grandmother had passed away, and there was going to be an inheritance for me because it would have went to my mother. And again, not like $1 million or anything, but a nice chunk of change that it really helped me at the time and changed my life. And when I knew the money was coming, I got nervous.
mm,
Right? Because, like, not that I blew any of the money with my mom, I bought a house, I did responsible things with it, but there's nothing left over, you know? So I was like, "How I wanna make sure I don't mess this up again," and I was so scared I was gonna mess it up because the last time I had gotten a windfall like that, I didn't have anything left, but what I wasn't looking at, what I wasn't giving myself credit for was I bought a condo, and then I'd sold that condo and bought a house, and then I used more of that money and I built a house, and then I sold that house and bought 3 houses, like, I've made really great financial decisions, but my uncle tells me, and this is true, I'm asset rich, cash poor. So, hearing things like that, it's like, oh, I should have more diversified, wealth and this and that. So, my coach at the time and I created that mantra, my wealth comes from love. And I look at it every day. I still do, to remind myself that these, and again, for our audience, if you've received an inheritance and you have feelings about it, because like me, you cried going, I'm so grateful I have this condo, but I would rather live in a shitty apartment and have my mother, right?
Mhm.
Like you just said, they chose it. They wrote your name on a piece of paper and had it notarized, or a lawyer signed it so that you would have this gift, so that they could keep giving to you in the ways that they trusted you to take care of it. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing that it comes from love. It doesn't come from death or fear or loss. It came from love.
I love that. Mm.
Mhm.
My wealth comes from love. I might have to throw that on the list.
Yeah, I remember what you said to me on set. I said something that you liked and you're like, I'm going to quote you 3 times and then it's fair use.
Then
That's fine.
after that, it is mine.
So funny. So Reiki, we didn't get into that yet. My mother was a Reiki master. She attuned my sister, taught me a little bit. I wound up getting my certifications when I got older. I never got my level 3, which I will do one day. But so where did that come in?
I was going to mention Reiki because we were talking about shame and guilt, and I was thinking about the solar plexus and the sacral chakras. So, for people who are in the uninitiated and maybe unfamiliar part, Reiki is a healing practice and technique that really helps people relax. It helps people reduce their stress. It removes blockages that may be energetic or auric in someone's life, really all around the plan to feel better, right?
Mm.
And so, at the top of the pandemic, so the pandemic started on my birthday, March 18th, 2020.
Oh my
And
gosh.
uh,
Happy birthday.
yeah, right, right. Happy birthday. But a few weeks after the pandemic had started, my father had slipped into a coma. And it was unexpected. Like, none of us knew that was going to happen. To take you back to times at the beginning of the pandemic, when a loved one went to the hospital, they weren't letting other people visit them
Yeah.
because of everything that was happening with coronavirus. And he went to a coma, and we could not visit him. And so
Wow.
it was challenging. Like, I remember my blood pressure had spiked one night because I had stopped sleeping for real and I stopped eating. And my doctor was like, "Hey, you can't go on like this. You need to do something different." And someone told me, like, "Hey, I have had a Reiki session. You should try Reiki," which was wild because my therapist at the time, she was a Reiki master teacher, and I did not know that, or I
Yeah.
didn't remember that. And so I was telling her, like, "Yeah, I want to try Reiki, but I don't know, like, where to get started." She's like, "Oh, I can give you a Reiki session." So I was like, "Okay, cool." And then right before the Reiki session, she let me know, like, she sat me down. She's like, "Hey, this may be a little different than our therapy sessions because as a Reiki master teacher, there may be things that are given to me that you didn't tell me that I'm sharing with you. And I don't want you to be alarmed by that. I just want you to know that it comes from a knowing and not anything else." I was like, "Okay, well, that's cool. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a man of God. I can pick that up. I understand." After that Reiki session, the light that I felt, like the weight that was off of me, even my face, I can look in the mirror and see that I was lighter and like, what is going on? So I asked her, like, "Hey, how do I do this for myself? Like, how do I continue to do this even when I'm not in front of you?" And she told me, like, "Oh, well, I want to attune some people this year." And when I first said that I would do it, I really did it to heal myself, like
Mhm.
to be able to remove energetic blockages for myself. I had no intention to be using it for anything else. But then as I learned Reiki and got attuned, there were people in my life who experiences that were just happening that I felt like I could help that person.
Yeah.
Like, one example was my cousin was insomniac. She was always talking about how she couldn't get rest. She couldn't sleep for more than 3 hours at a time. and I had Reiki'd my bed after I became attuned to as a practitioner, and I'd slept like a rock, like somebody had punched me in my temple, and I was passed out, knocked out. And I was like, well, maybe I could Reiki your bed and I can see if this will work. I Reiki'd her bed, and she was supposed to be going out of town the next morning. And she had called me when she was on the road. And I said, hey, did you get a chance to sleep last night? She's like, I slept so hard that I woke up late.
Wow.
Like, oh, that's amazing. And so after I had that experience, I was like, well, I've been, Reikiing myself every single day. And I've got a friend, Shiana Rivers, who's a Reiki master teacher as well. And she's like, when it comes to Reiki, I put that shit on everything,
Hmm.
like Frank's Red Hot. And I started using Reiki in other areas of my life, and I started seeing like the impact of it. And I had a session with a financial therapy client of mine, and a lot of the debriefings were so clear about where some blockages were in their energetic life that it only made sense to talk about Reiki with them. And so the alignment was very clear, and then also the interconnectedness got very clear for me. And so I was like, all right, well, it may be time to see how I can join forces on all of this and all of the things that I'm doing, like how they could help someone financially. And the more clients that I worked with, they were asking specifically for these sessions. There are some people who from other countries will find me, and so I have clients in 5 different countries at this point who come to me for money Reiki, where they can get a Reiki session, but also get somebody to help them financially. And I believe that Reiki is both an art and a science, right? So you
Mhm,
mentioned your mother was a Reiki master. She
mhm,
attuned your sister and she taught you things. The way that we practice, the way that we remove blockages, the way that we help people rebalance their chakras, that is very clear. That is the science of it. The art of it, though, is that every single one of us has our own gifts that we bring to the practice. And I know that my gift is helping people relax and drop their shoulders from their ears when it comes to understanding their money and being able to really take a deep breath, exhale, and feel little bit better about their financial situation or where they're going on their financial journey. And so being able to bring that practice with, all the things that I've done in personal finance and financial wellness over, the past 12 years, I didn't want to negate that with my Reiki practice. And so now it's very intertwined, it's very connected.
mhm.
People can't get a Reiki session from me without it being a financial therapy session. So um, that's how I got started into Reiki and where it's kind of evolved now.
I mean, I feel more relaxed just hearing you talk about it. And you're naturally just a healer. That's who you are, Stephen. So you're healing. Like I can see the energy coming out of your throat chakra. I see this beautiful blue as you're talking, and I need some healing. So I'm ready to, I'm receiving it as you're talking. And
Mm,
it's so beautiful. And I have a lot of clients who are coaches and they're also healers in some way, whether it's, more esoteric or physical. I have a client who's a chiropractor and she's also a wellness coach. I have a client who's an astrologer and a tarot reader, and then she's also a business coach.
mm,
And the same for me. So hearing you say that, it just gives everybody permission to remember you are more than one thing. You will always be more than one thing. Don't let anybody judge you or try to put you in a box. Do not put yourself in a box because you were given these gifts for a reason. It's part of your dharma. So if you are forcing a way to combine them and it's not working, surrender it a bit, go with the flow, let your life show up for you the way that your script has been written, and you will see the interconnectedness of all of your brilliance the way that Stephen has in his life and how I do in mine. And it just makes it so much easier, doesn't it?
boy, say that. To your point, like I remember when I was younger, studying financial education and creating curriculum and doing these different things, and there was a point where I had like my life insurance license to sell life insurance to people,
Mhm.
and there was a point where because of the way that my financial education curriculum was growing, and I had a weekly money segment on CBS every week, every Monday morning,
Fun.
there were some financial advising firms that were like, "Oh, maybe you can come and work for us or come work with us." And it just I could never shake it.
Yeah.
Elysia. Like every time that I went and interviewed with some of these folks, I was like, I don't think I want to do this
Mhm.
like this. Like I feel like I'm supposed to be in this lane, but I don't think I'm supposed to be in that specific lane that y'all got going on. And so that you're exactly right. When you lean into knowing that you're more than one thing, like I'm a financial educator and therapist, but I'm also a Reiki master teacher. And the way that I feel in terms of money and how I talk about it is going to be different than your financial advisor, uncle, who
Yeah.
is telling you like what the trip to Australia may look like.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. We have to be clear that that's okay. And another thing that helps me be clear on that is that I know that all healers, the great ones, they help people acknowledge that they are healers themselves and
Hmm.
they give people the tools to heal themselves. And so the things that I'm doing and that I'm teaching are things that have worked for me and with me and that have worked with other people. And I just want people to have the tools to heal themselves, whether it's financially or energetically or emotionally or mentally or spiritually, physically, however that looks like. That's really what I want. And
Mm.
it's impossible to separate these things. I think the bees are some of the most amazing creatures. They've built one of the most amazing shapes that I think in nature exist.
That's
And
so
so
cool.
if we think about like where you get a honeycomb, that six-sided figure that's all in that sheet where all that honey and goodness is coming from, it is very difficult to take out one wall of that six-sided shape. And if you try to, it's odds are the other things are going to start faltering or failing.
Mhm.
And that's really how we have to think about our lives. Like when we're not on our best game mentally, that's going to impact our finances. Having some challenges physically, that's going to impact your money too. If you can't get out of your own way when it comes to the relationships in your life, whether that's romantic or familial or anything else like that, that's going to impact your money as well.
Yes.
And if we don't acknowledge those things, I think that we set ourselves up with a beautiful recipe for disaster to
Mhm.
where we get into these ruts and can't figure out like, how did I get here? And we're starting to focus on the fruit, not the root of our challenge. Um, but I'll pause there because I feel like I'm about to talk about all types of things that we.
I'm in it. I'm here. I'm here for the sermon. You know, uh, so many people don't want money to be such a big deal. And, there's all these stories about that in their head. And when I first was looking into my astrology and I saw, oh, I've got our money house in Western astrology anyway, which most people are familiar with. So I'll talk about that.
Mhm.
Is our second house, right? There's other planets that and houses that where your finances and career are impacted, but your second house is what you look at. And in my second house, of Jupiter, which is the planet of good fortune. Like the richest people in the world have Jupiter in their second house. I also have Saturn, which is a planet of challenges and karma and, lessons and all that stuff. And then I have Pluto, which is kind of like the trickster planet that like confuses, makes it, a little bit fuzzy. So you find your way. It's all there. I also have Venus, which is what inspired me to work mostly with women in this lifetime as far as career and stuff goes. It wasn't until I looked at my astrology that I thought for me, okay, I got so many planets. I have more planets in my second house than I have in any of my other houses. And I think it's true in my Vedic chart also.
Mhm.
And that for me was okay, money is a big thing that I'm learning here this time around as Elysia. And what I've realized in having so many of these conversations is money is actually a big lesson for everyone. And I want to ask you, Stephen, from a spiritual perspective, why that is. Why is money like it's like you just said, it's so interconnected. You have an issue with your relationship, there's going to be something going on with your money. Why do you think money is this thing that, us in this current society, and I don't know how far back it goes for humans or what it is on other planets, if that's a thing, right? Like, why? Why is it such a lesson for us? What's it connected to?
In terms of spirituality, it is connected to energy, just in the simplest way that I can tell you. And I'll mention this in two ways. One is the energy of what we have done, what the work that we have created in this space to say that, hey, this is the value that I have that I can use to get the other things that I need. And you talked about like the history of money. Right now, many of us are using money as digital numbers that get sent with text messages and messages at this point.
Right, we're so
Uh,
disconnected from it.
very disconnected from it. Before, like you would put your hands on the paper or the precious metals that said that this is the value that you just created, that you worked very hard for. And so people had a different relationship with money to give it or
Mhm.
exchange it, right?
That's
Uh,
so fair because, like, now we've disassociated actually feeling the weight, the literal weight of what we've quote unquote earned or received.
Absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. And in that same vein, like even years and years ago, thousands of years ago, some people, their value was in livestock. It
Mhm.
was in what they grew in terms of the animals that they had, or maybe it's around the garments that they created and they could exchange and offer to another person in a bartering system. And so when we're talking about money, we're talking about exchanging yourself for something that you need with
Mhm.
somebody else. That is as like loudly spiritual as it gets, right?
Mhm.
Because as you're no matter the system that you believe, whatever religious practice that you have, if you believe that there is something bigger than yourself, you also oftentimes believe that you are here not to make things challenging for someone here, not to make things a problem for someone, but to give of yourself, to give what you want back, right? And so think
Mhm.
about that in the financial sense.
Mhm.
When we're using money or investing, we want that to come back. We want to see that again. And so it's nothing that we can separate in that way to say that money is over here and our spiritual experience is over here. It's just not possible. It doesn't
Yeah.
mesh that way. And you were talking about Reiki earlier, and I know we can talk about it very much so. But as we talk about the chakras, and you talked about human design, or you talked about astrology, I was thinking
Yeah.
about human design as well when you were
Yeah,
talking
I'm a
about astrology.
manifesting generator 5-1. What are you?
Okay, so I'm a generator 6'2". And
Okay.
so, but as we talk about that, right, and or we talk about me knowing that I may be a Piscean sun in Western astrology, but I'm a Scorpio moon and Leo rising, and what that means for my chart and all the
Mm,
things that are in my houses, right? This is information for us,
it is.
and oftentimes when we're dealing with money, earlier I mentioned to you that we should use emotions as information as well.
Mhm.
Our spiritual connection is also the information we need for these financial decisions that we're making. And if we don't give ourselves like the ability to use this information, and it gets stronger the more that you do it, the more that you stop and say, like, should out of these few financial advisors that I have talked to, who should I work with? And trust that you're feeling in your gut, in your solar plexus, that feeling when you put your hand on your stomach right above your navel, that you can trust yourself to say like, this is going in the direction that it's supposed to go,
Mm.
right? You said something earlier where we talked about spiritual connection and what you should be doing and how you should be managing. I
Yeah.
don't want anyone to should all over themselves.
No.
The spiritual connection that we have with our money and with the other things in our life, but specifically, we're talking about finances with our money, can be understated because we know that this is the way that this money was created was from this energy that we created.
There's a book called Busting Loose from the Money Game. You ever read it?
I haven't, but I'll
Oh,
put it
man.
on.
Read this book and call me. It is mind-blowing. So, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and, my friend Gary Renard is a Course in Miracles teacher, and I shared it with him, and I said, "Gary, this is like the Course, but for money," right? I even have a quote from it that I have on my necklace that I give to all my clients, which is infinite abundance, right? Which is the truth of who we are. Like, we are not disconnected from the abundance of the universe, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful book. One of the many, principles behind this idea is this like phase one living that we're on earth and it all feels like so real, and every decision we make feels so real. And then there's this phase two living of like bliss and trust and surrender, and knowing that if you do what you feel motivated and inspired to do, like your wealth shows up for you, just living on your path, not living in juxtaposition. There's so much more in this really beautiful book, but it just reminded me a bit of what you just shared, that it is all connected. And I love the title. The cover is really cheesy. It's like bad 90s clip art. Sorry, Robert Scheinfeld. I hope you'll be on my show one day. But he knows. um, but the book is beautiful. And he has different mantras and things too to kind of go through this process of when you feel that conflict arise. So I'm really excited to dive into your affirmations and yours, and probably a more modern approach to it too. So I just wanted to share that resource with you. I think you'll really like it. And to our audience, Busting Loose from the Money Game. So
Busting loose from the money game. No, I'll check it out for sure.
it's pretty badass. Have you written any books?
Not yet.
Well, you
I,
will. I feel it. I see it.
I have some things in the works that we could talk about offline, but
Okay. Okay.
I'm, I'm really excited about the things that have been most impactful to my financial life. And I know that a couple of those things, like we're talking about now, affirmations, but also stories. And, throughout this whole conversation we've had, those are things that just keep coming back. Uh,
Hmm.
our experiences, like you sharing your experiences about money and the things that you've changed, and those stories and how they'll impact somebody else that's listening to this podcast right now, but also how you changed those mantras that you give your clients. When it comes to affirmations, they have the ability to not make something happen, right? I'll debunk that. Like some people will say, "Oh, these affirmations are manifestations that are happening in my life." What affirmations are doing is that they're changing the way that you think and talk to yourself, and that ability gives you the space to go and make these things happen, right? And to create these things that are in your life. Nothing is created in the physical realm that wasn't created first spiritually. And so these affirmations that you talk to yourself and change the way that you're thinking and hearing yourself talk about anything, not just money, but anything, really work in starting in how our brains work. Our brains want to keep us safe. Our brains also want to use experiences that we've had to keep us safe. And so if you're somebody who haven't invested in a condo before, you've never bought your own property before, maybe you are feeling nervous about buying one. And maybe because of the experiences that you've had or seen people in your life have around, making this large purchase and maybe getting underwater because of some economic time, or they had some type of financial hardship after they purchased something, can start showing up in your body, even though you haven't made this decision or had this
Mm.
experience. And so, to keep you safe, your brain may be telling you it's not time to buy that house. You should not buy that condo.
Mm.
This does not make financial sense. Don't do this right now. Right.
The heart and the mind don't always agree. It's true about love.
They don't always agree.
Hmm.
But in the sense of your affirmations, you can give your mind some new things, some new seeds to plant and to grow from. And so instead of your mind immediately thinking of something negative to protect you, to say, "Hey, don't do that," you can create an affirmation that you say every day that says, "I make wise financial decisions when it comes to the roof over my head."
Mm.
This is an affirmation I just created off the top of my head as me and you were talking.
That's maybe
But
that's for me.
think of somebody who wants to buy a house,
Yeah.
is nervous about that financial decision. And anytime that they have a negative thought that flies across our mind, they can use that specific affirmation to interrupt that thought.
Yes, they can.
To say like, no, I make wise financial decisions with the roof over my head. I make wise financial decisions with the roof over my head. Even when somebody's saying like interest rates are super high or you need this in terms of a down payment, all of those things can be considered and still make a wise financial decision with the roof over your head.
Yes, you can. That's part of that's a mindfulness practice because what you got to, in order to get yourself out of the negative cycle, you have to go, wait, I just went down a rabbit hole of really hard, shitty thinking. I make wise financial decisions with the roof over my head. You come back to it, come back to it. I have this tattoo that says, remember your soul.
Mm,
And that's one of mine, and my
yeah,
wealth comes from love. And to your point, from the scientific perspective, our brain doesn't know the difference between what's actually happening and what we tell ourselves is happening.
exactly, exactly. And I learned another thing when I was doing the morning show every Monday morning for like 5.5 years. The executive producer told me, she said, "Hey, when someone sees you on their TV screen, their brain cannot tell the difference that you are not actually in their house.
Wow.
So when they see you on a TV screen, and we talk about us being in people's households, when they see you on a TV screen, you are in their house with them. That's why when they see you at a grocery store, at a gas station, or a gym, they're telling you how well they know you because they've been
Yeah.
seeing you so often. They see you every single week. They see you more than they see some of their family. And the brain is a beautiful thing. It does so many different things that I don't think we talk about enough, but you're exactly right. It cannot tell the difference between you joking about being broke and you actually being broke. And so when you're
Mm.
telling your friend or your mind like, "Oh, I'm broke, I can't afford it," instead of using affirming language to say, "I'm actually focusing on something else, so that's not something I'm gonna spend my money on right now," it hits totally different.
Oh, your words are your wand. That's a whole
Mhm.
nother conversation, right? And what we're talking about here is creating your reality. That's so cool about the TV thing. I hadn't heard it that way. It makes sense because I remember when Chris Cornell died. I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 days. Like, I felt like I was grieving a family member, and I was confused by it. But now, hearing you say that, it does feel that way, and I've told everybody, if anyone in the band Pearl Jam, when they eventually, transition out, my husband calls it when they go to Mars, I will require some space to
Yeah,
to
yeah,
grieve, because we do feel like we get to know these people, and I think that's, you're so personable and loving, and you are so compassionate, and that's why people fall in love with you and continue to tune in, whether it's your Instagram or your LinkedIn. And I'm excited for them to check out your nonprofit too, for nomoney.org. And Stephen, can I ask you one more question? I know you were over time.
go for it.
Okay, I asked you this on set, but you might have a different answer today, and I loved your answer on set. If and when you win the lottery jackpot, and I'm talking like hundreds of millions or maybe $1 billion, what's the first thing you do when you find out? And then how do you spend your time?
So the first thing I do when I find out that I hit the jackpot, I believe the first thing I'm gonna do is call my accountant,
Great answer.
right? Atia, if you're listening, I'm gonna call you first, my friend. Right? Atia is an amazing accountant. She is licensed in Canada and in the United States. So I
Awesome.
would call her and let her know, like, "Hey, I just got this money. It's coming." Right? But the way that I would spend it, really, I
How do you
would get
spend your time?
how I would spend my time. I would get rid of my cell phones, and I would get a house phone.
Hmm.
I'd also get a pager. And if you can catch me on the house phone or on my pager, then we'll talk when we talk. And I would get a house in the country because I know that's exactly where my fiance wants to live. And I would become a beekeeper full time and make honey and relax. That's what I would do with my time.
I love it. One of my favorite things about the answer to this question is that gives you a clue into where your heart is pulling you anyway. So, whatever the answer is for everyone listening, find a little piece of that and start doing it now.
That's a
You
fact.
know? Yeah, and you're already really good about that, like, I know you don't have your email alerts turned on. I don't even think you have your text alerts turned on. You're like, right? Steven's like, "You wanna reach me, you reach me, and then I'll let you know when I'm checking my shit." I'm like, "That's amazing." Like, the mindful choice you've made to bring peace into your life is so beautiful.
No, I appreciate that. And I know that that's part of that made us mesh so well the first time
Yeah,
we met each other. Because I know you do the same thing and you
I
bring that
do.
same magic to your clients. So I'll be remiss if I didn't thank you for the work that you did that get people out of their minds and into their bodies and spirits so they can do the work they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, my friend. Let's keep doing it.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, honey. Well, you have an amazing, wonderful, beautiful day and a beautiful wedding soon. And for everyone listening, watching, go follow Stephen. Continue to be inspired by him. Hire him, work with him, read his future book, and stay deeply in touch.
I love that. Thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome, love. Talk to you soon.